Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here, once again based on one of your newer suggestions. This one, a heavily suggested entry, both recently and in the past too. The reason why I hadn't picked it was because when I was initially looking at it, just at a brief glance, I thought to myself, I know I had done this before, and it had to do with this. This was a video that I did back in 2017. About a set of cryptids known as the white things / the white devils / the devil dogs. I'll include the link for it below if you haven't had a chance to see it. But when I realized that that's more along the lines of almost like a species of cryptids, this video will actually deal with one particular cryptid from that species. So in other words, like if you were to take a group of snakes, you know how snakes fall under one category, but there's individual snakes within that particular species. That's what I'm referring to here. And I realized there was enough information to share a separate video for. Not only that, but it has to do with another cryptid here in the United States, and it has to do with very recent sightings too. So I thought, why not? Let me go ahead and I'll include a separate video altogether. But it has to do with this. You're looking at a representation of it now. Has a very unique name, and you'll know why here in a minute. It's known as the Sheepsquatch. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating information associated with this United States, West Virginia cryptid in this case. So what is this Sheepsquatch? Well, again, if you could call it coming from a part of a species of these white things, white devils / devil dogs, this is a cryptid that is found here in the United States, specifically in West Virginia, specifically in counties known as Boone, Kanawha, Putnam, and then also Mason. So those of you that happen to live in those areas, you're going to have maybe good luck, bad luck when it comes to running into this cryptid, because there have been a good amount of sightings, especially when I was reading about Boone County sightings there in that location. So great chance if you're doing cryptid hunting and you want to go to West Virginia for it, go to Boone County, and then especially the forest. That's where you'll have a good chance of running into this creature. As far as the Sheepsquatch's characteristics, it's this. Imagine your average Bigfoot, like a hulking size of a Bigfoot, probably around 6 feet, although I read another report stating it was almost 9 feet tall. And then in this case, its shoulders also being about 4 to 5 feet across, a giant, in other words, easily the size of a bear and then some, bipedal with a shaggy wool-like fur, and then its head being almost in a pointed angle. So in other words, its snout and then its mouth is pointing forward. That's what you have here. But setting it different from the other white things, white devils or white dogs, is the fact that it also has this saber-like teeth, and then most prominently a set of horns that look just like the kind that you find on your average goat. In other words, they're the horns that curl backwards and then curl forwards at the pointy ends. I don't know why it's called a Sheepsquatch necessarily, because I don't think sheep have those type of horns. A goat does, but I guess goat squatch doesn't count when it comes to a type of catchy name. But Sheepsquatch is the way it goes primarily because of its fur, and then again it's coming from some kind of species that has horns as well. And then at the end of its forelimbs, it has these paw-like hands, and then it also has a very distinct smell. If you're in the vicinity of the Sheepsquatch, you'll know it because you'll smell sulfur. Sulfur absolutely has a very, very distinct smell. Those of you that have smelled it, especially those sulfur factories, know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, that's essentially what this creature has, and it all has to do with its origins of it being apparently born in some area, a TNT area there in Mason County, once again in West Virginia, and that's this creature's like a natural, I guess, odor coming from the fact of where it was born. It emanates that particular odor, but it's also known to have a very strong musky-like smell, very close almost to the fact of having like skunks, in other words, like a very strong skunk smell as well. Either way, though, if you're going to see a giant hulking creature with shaggy white fur and these goat horns and then also sulfur smell, basically you're looking at a Sheepsquatch altogether. The bad news, though, was this is a very territorial creature. On one end, it absolutely defends its territory and chases people off. On the other end, interestingly enough, it runs away. I guess it just depends on the very specific sheepsquatch that you run into. Gives you the idea that there's maybe within the species itself that there's a large set of numbers associated with them. And then as far as those sightings, yes, they're pretty recent. You could go into the 90s as one of the earliest starting points. There was a Navy seaman who was able to witness this creature. I don't know if he was there just relaxing in the forest, camping in other words, but he saw it come out of the forest. He saw it go into the nearby creek, and then there it went in its hulking size, drinking by the creek just for a few minutes before moving back into the other side of, I guess, whatever it was there in terms of the forest. This creature apparently never saw the Navy man. He never was able to, see, or maybe just didn't care altogether, but that's one of the sightings. And then another sighting involved two children. There they were in Boone County playing within their yard, and then all of a sudden they saw what they described as a large white bear stand up on its hind legs in a nearby forest. Interestingly enough, the sheepsquatch did not see the children first. Instead, when it did see them, it was almost startled by their sight, and it decided to run away. Interesting, right? Here you have something that is a hulking size of a beast, easily much bigger than these small children. And yet there it went, running off back into the forest, apparently breaking off limbs during its quest too, during its sprint, showing the power that this thing has. And then in 1995, there was a couple, they were driving within a car, once again in Boone County, and then that's when they saw what they described as a large white beast, one more time, this time by the side of the forest, this time though along the roadway, just sitting down, almost like in a ditch, almost just thinking to itself, or who knows what it was doing altogether. Either way, though, when they stopped to take a look at it, that's when they saw this creature. They interestingly stated that it looked like it had 4 eyes altogether. This time, though, this creature decided to, I guess, attack. Like it leapt out of the ditch, and then it went straight towards their car. They drove off quickly, in other words, to get out of there, which makes 100% perfect sense. You're not going to stand a chance with this creature. And then that's when that was the last time they saw it. Cut to a couple of years later in 1999. That's when some campers actually came across this creature too. Once again in Boone County. There they were at night creating a bonfire, probably just talking and drinking and so on. That's when they heard within their vicinity what they described as an animal scuffling around their area. They even heard it snorting as well, but they couldn't see it just yet. They knew it was there. It knew they were there, but at the same time, they couldn't see it, but it could no doubt see them. And then that's when it appeared right in front of them, right from the pitch black darkness all the way into the fire, or the light of the fire. And of course, they saw this hulking white beast. And so they immediately ran through the forest, running back to their nearby house. This thing, the sheepsquatch, decided to give chase. And as it did so, when they crossed the edge of the forest, in other words, like if you imagine the forest ending and then natural backyard, camp, forest, from the forest to the grass type stuff, that's where this thing just stopped. It absolutely stopped, and it decided to just stare at them and then let out what they described as a very, very terrible scream. And then that's when it went back into the forest, and that was the last they ever saw of it. Interestingly enough, when they went back to their campsite, they found it completely torn up. Whatever this thing was, it decided to leave its mark within the campsite too. And then finally, another sighting occurred in 2015, once again involving campers spending a night there within some woods. This time, though, it was an area in Virginia, in a place called Folks Run, if I'm not mistaken. That's where, once again, these campers saw a creature, describing it as being almost 9 feet tall, shoulder length of about 4 to 5 feet, and there it was at the top of a hill, staring right at them. That's pretty freaky, no, right? I imagine they got that sixth sense. You know how when you feel like someone is staring at you and you're looking inadvertently in that direction? Imagine seeing something like this staring down right at you. And then, of course, like something straight out of a movie nightmare, that's when it started charging right down that hill straight towards them. Of course, they ran. They ran like heck to get out of there. And as they did so, they came across a river. No choice. And when it came to that river, they had to cross it. There was absolutely no alternative. And so when they went across the river, they noticed that this thing came to that edge and then started crossing the river too. But then something surprising came up. This was very fascinating to me. They guessed that there was about 2 miles away, all of a sudden, a blood-curdling roar. Like it was something along the lines of a screech or something else, like a large animal roar. This caught the attention of the chasing Sheepsquatch, who was again right there within the river. It looked up almost like it was in shock or fear, and that's how they described it, at least, because it heard this screech, it heard this roar. Immediately it turned around and it ran back into that direction of whatever that noise was. So I don't know exactly what was playing when it came to this encounter. Gave me the impression that maybe it was the parent, if you could call it that, of this Sheepsquatch. Maybe it was calling for its younger sibling, whatever it was. Maybe it was, how they have different levels in cities when it comes to leadership. Maybe it was the leader of the Sheepsquatch calling out. Who knows? But essentially, this is what happened. The camper saw it leave immediately, and then that's one of the last encounters associated with it. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information I could find as far as this very, very unique creature, the Sheepsquatch. Once again, part of these white things, white devils / devil dogs. If anyone has any more information, those of you that live in West Virginia, maybe even in those counties, particularly Boone County, then please post those comments below. I'd love to hear what your local experiences are. If I'm ever in the West Virginia area, and again in that area in Boone County, I'm going to try to find something to see if there's a chance to get to this creature, because based on all these sightings, you would think there's a good chance that you could have something either heard or maybe even seen as far as the Sheepsquatch. But again, any comments below, please post them as always. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Bye.